Welcome to Cactus Crossfire, your go-to for hot takes and prickly debates.
Welcome in. We're back again. I'm your host, Sisto Abeyta, and here, as always, is my co-host, Eddie Ableser. Eddie, where you at? What you doing?
What's good, Sisto? I'm here in the great state of Utah. So excited for another episode of Cactus Crossfire and being with our hosts at 8688 Studios, Gabriel Baca, the only man I've met. He is so smart, he can divide by zero. How impressive is that, Sisto?
You know, it is impressive that Gabe can divide by that large of a number. You know, I mean, it's the absence of nothing and I think it's appropriate that we're having that math conversation as I'm wearing my, Jaime Escalante hat today. So there you go, bud.
You're looking sharp, man. You are looking sharp. I told you earlier that you got that mock turtle, you got that white fedora. He is rocking it.
It's only because of this, Eddie. At some point, I wanted to be like Eddie and be seen as Dr. Abeyta, that collegiate professor, walking into the classroom, spewing knowledge on all the students. I do a little bit of public speaking at my alma mater, the University of New Mexico. And so, maybe this is the outfit I need to wear next time I go head on up there.
You look very professor-ish.
Right?
Very,
but like professor in the classroom, not professor on an island that was stranded with 7 other people.
Yeah, well, if you're the professor, I guess I'm Gilligan. But
I am wearing a blue shirt, so that might make me the skipper, buddy. That might make me the skipper. And in this episode, we're talking about trust and how it's the invisible thread in all that we do in politics, and how we're trying to draw folks together, our communities, democracy. What happens when that thread starts to get pulled and we have to start to rebuild it? So, truth isn't just collapsing for the reasons that you and I think that they are. I mean, it's a part of the bigger story. I mean, the fallout in Arizona, the party switching in Nevada, classroom scandals, the shooting at the White House. But we're going to take the time today to try to help our viewers connect all those little dots. And so let's just kick it off, Eddie. I mean, Washington Press Corps had their big dinner up in D.C. It was the first time that the president actually attended the dinner. He got ushered off stage pretty quickly because it turned out there was a shooter in the hallway. What are your thoughts, Eddie? What are you thinking about all of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, setting the stage, it's not recent. Like, let's be clear. I mean, it was a little surreal. We've talked about this before. I come from a political tradition where shootings are not abnormal, unfortunately, with the friends and the political associates that I've been around. I've had my own death threats as a former elected official. It's terrifying. Increase in political violence. Sirhan Sirhan had his attempt way back in the 80s on President Reagan, right? Like, there's assassinations. I mean, gosh, Kennedy, that one of the biggest assassinations ever. Live Square. I was obsessed about those. The history of that, right? I think it's disappointing. It's sad. It's disgusting. It has no part of politics. And there certainly is folks that we should hold accountable for their words and rhetoric that inflame this type of attitude. And frankly, I think it's a mental illness issue. And we've talked about mental illness before. I'm a big believer that we need to do an appropriate job to help people. Listen, I'm not saying that tongue-in-cheek. I'm saying that legitimately, right? Because the synapses that are not firing the appropriate way for individuals in their brain are causing them to do straight up crazy things. Shooting and trying to assassinate someone is a straight up crazy thing.
Yeah.
And that needs to get fixed in this country, Sisto.
Well, and
the problem is around the notions of mental health service and use is we're forgetting a whole nother layer. And in this country, we made it an effort to decriminalize the notion of mental illness. And I get what that's saying. We need to normalize the fact that people struggle with a variety of mental illnesses in their life over a lifetime. Everyone has something. But we also have to remember that there are serious mental illnesses that need serious help, that need true integrated support systems. And unfortunately, in this country, we went so far on the spectrum of we had institutionalization, where anyone that exhibited these types of homicidal, suicidal, harm to others, harm to self, ideation, that we went so far from putting them in places to protect themselves and protect the community that now it's community-based, and folks have case managers, and that's how we operate today. We used to put them in facilities so they can get better, they can get regulated with the right drugs in their brains to calm those synapses, to regulate this, that processes and make sure the cortisol levels, serotonin levels are correct. Now they're in the community, and this is what happens. They become teachers. They become radicalized by their algorithms on TikTok or Instagram or you name it, on social media. And that algorithm force feeds a notion that the world is a way that probably really isn't, but they become so radicalized that they cause them to do something as awful.
And I think that that's something that we've tried to do here on Cactus Crossfire is understanding that this is a platform where we have to bring a level of responsibility to the platform and to the people that watch and the people that catch us as a part of the algorithm, right? That because of other people that follow us and we land up in their FYP or whatever, we have to be mindful of that issue. And that's why we put so much of an emphasis here on Cactus Crossfire. And I think that that's something that is missing in this space of podcasts and these types of places where people just come on here and say whatever they want, and whether it be true or not, and they become a validated source of information, which at this press corps event, at the White House press corps dinner, this is a celebration of true journalism, true journalists who put themselves out there every single day trying to get to the public the truth and report accurately and fairly as best they can with the information that is given to them from the administration. I was so impressed to watch, even though you had, the incident had happened, there's a lot of cutaways because CNN covers this event. And in this instance, and I was not at a loss that this event happened at the same location where Reagan had gotten shot, right?
Yeah.
So the lapses in the security hasn't gotten better since '84, right? And so we've got to do a better job of creating safe spaces. This individual had checked himself in a number of days prior to the event. Looked like your average person. And you and I have both been to DC many a time where there's functions happening in hotels that we stay at where it would be very easy for someone to carry out one of these types of attacks that we saw with this event. But above all of that is that what seems to be very interesting in this attempt versus other attempts is how the media was a part of it, right? The media, the media was in the room and watching and as I was saying earlier, those cutaways of journalists that were trying to take cover, but at the same time were up with their phones, reporting of what was happening.
Did you see the clip from Wolf Blitzer?
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Wolf Blitzer, the guy ran straight past him, right? And so the press corps is always going to be a trusted source. That's why it's so disingenuous when we hear people out there start using the term fake news, because this wasn't fake news. This was live and in their face. I think that we have a responsibility, and I think that the public has a responsibility to look for those truths that are happening now. At the same time, you're absolutely right. Mental health has to be a part of the conversation. And we've said it time and time again on this show. We've talked about it. There hasn't been so much of a political overreaction to what happened with this. I think the only most political thing that I saw come out of this was the president coming out and saying, well, this is why we need the addition to the White House, right?
And honestly, he ain't lying. Like, let's break that down for a quick second.
Yeah.
I know it costs money, and I know he's going to throw his name on it, and it's going to drive the left crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you and I have both been to the White House. I mean, let's be clear. George Washington did not intend the White House to look like this phenomenal, grandiose building that has amazing rooms to host heads of state. It's sort of a clunky old building. It really is. I mean, there's not a lot of use for it. Mm-hmm. So his design for the East Wing now, I mean, yeah, like what about creating a place where you can have the most powerful person in the world and surround them with a variety of big events like the White House Correspondents' Dinner and press corps. I mean, to me, it makes sense. I know that the left just tries to find ways to criticize Donald Trump in anything. And I know on this podcast, we've tried to become rational and say, listen, there's things that he needs to be held responsible for. We have certainly held him and his administration responsible for things, but get over yourselves, people. Like, who cares? Just add another freaking room to the Capitol, the home of the president, right? The symbol of democracy in the world. Like, make it look a little bit better and don't jeopardize more assassination attempts from some ridiculous 30-year-old from California.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that there may be a need for it. I think where we get lost in the weeds is how it was done and how it was approached. Even though it is the president.
Isn't that Donald Trump on everything, Sisto? On how it's done?
I mean, it's not just Donald.
His style is awful.
But I'm not saying that it's just Donald Trump. It's everybody.
Okay.
Right? It's everybody. Everybody has a disagreement on how it's done. That's where the politics, I think it's just like when you see these pollsters, a poll comes back and they say, do you favor education for your children? That's the question, right? Everybody favors education for their children. Everybody, that polls through the roof. It's how we do it is where the nuance starts to break in the political arena. And I think that it's that nuance that it's not nuanced anymore. Now, what starts happening in that discourse is, what's the truth and what's the lie, right? And in this discourse, we have to look at it completely. We can't just parse it out and say, oh, it needs to happen because the president needs a safe space to be in. That's not the full story. The full story is, if he needs a safe space because of how government works, he needs to go ask Congress if he can do that. It's in their power to be the budgeters, right? They are the legislative. He is the executive. And even though it's his residence, it's still, in some sense, regulated by them. Just like the president made the call to say, deploy the National Guard into Washington, D.C., right? Consume on that because that's his prerogative to do. And Congress and the president, they have authority over how things are run in D.C. End of story. It's a more nuanced thing. Things are not as simple as people want them to be. And where the spin comes in, that's where we get lost between the truth and the lie. In this instance, I think, the press corps did a great job of, I mean, you had every camera in the country and plus in their pockets recording this from beginning to end.
Except for that one little homie that was sitting there eating his dinner through the whole shooting.
That one little homie that was eating his dinner through the whole shooting.
He's I got to get this down. They're going to clear the room. I'm starving.
Well, and you and I have been to many of those dinners where we've been working all day long, and that's the only place we're going to grab something to eat, because anybody who tries to find anything reasonable at a reasonable hour in DC after 9:00, good luck. That's all I'm going to say to you. Good luck. So, and leading that into the spin of things in California, right? Swalwell stepped out of the race. It became a wide open election. And all of a sudden, we see the emergence of Javier Becerra as the Democratic frontrunner in the Democratic primary.
So I watched the debate. I thought the debate was phenomenal. And we're going from, this awful event in D.C., this teacher lunatic that tried to assassinate, from California. Then we go to California, and here they are debating. So here on the stage, I think there's 8 of them total. They're debating about the state of California. And one of the biggest things they fight about is homelessness. Mm-hmm. But the underlying notion of homelessness is this issue around mental illness. What is the state of California doing truly to help people with significant mental illness? So they debated this on stage, and it was incredible. I mean, they went around and said, "Oh, what grade do you give Gavin Newsom for his work on homelessness and those with mental illness?" I mean, everyone B plus. I mean, talk about the most non-answer ever, right? Every Democrat and all the Republicans are like, "Oh, F's, he failed miserably." I mean, but no one really added much to it, especially on the Democratic side. None of those candidates added a lot of variety. I think Becerra did talk quite a bit about interventions that he was trying to get to in that space. Mm-hmm. But anyone who's been to California any time in the last 3 years knows, like, you can't walk down the street without tripping over a tent, right? Or without being asked for spare change, or approaching someone that is clearly mentally ill or on drugs. I mean, it is not the safest place to be. And that's all the way to San Diego, all the way up the coast, north of San Francisco. And my family and I have traveled all of those cities. We still go there frequently. And it's sad. Because I think that's why Becerra sort of took a little bit of a lead, because he sort of critiqued, in a small way, Newsom. And no one wanted to poo-poo Newsom because, he's the California darling that's going to jump in this presidential race. But, Karen Porter, got on stage, yelled at everyone like she does, right? Continued to minimize everyone else's existence to her great intellect. Honestly, Mahan did a great job, but Mahan and Thurman aren't gaining any momentum in this California race. Like they are, sitting 7 and 8. And my pick early on, Sisto, was Mayor Villarosa, right? And I really thought he was going to emerge, and he really hasn't. I mean, I thought he did a great job when he was in LA. I love his style. Hilton and Bianco, mostly Hilton, merging. And then you see Becerra. And then on top of it, you've got this billionaire, right? This billionaire, absolutely incredibly dorky, bizarre individual, Tom Steyer, who spends all his money. He wants to be a leader of something so bad. He has run for so many races. He has lost so many races. I think he ran for governor in Arizona. He got creamed there. Ran for Senate, perhaps. Like, he has run for so many races and lost. President, right? He tried to run for president, got creamed, 1%. I mean, the guy's got so much money and is just getting absolutely throttled. And you see him on stage, and it's cringeworthy, to quote my kids. Like, it's cringy. I can't watch it and not like, what are you doing, dude?
Well, but this is the thing, is that you've got such a wide range of candidates and a cast of characters and let's call it that. It's a cast of characters in California. Yeah. In that stage and in that debate, Eddie, what was the message? What was the overarching message? If you looked at the Democratic primary in California and you looked at those guys talking as just looking at it on face value, what was the message that threaded them all together?
Anti-Trump.
So other than that, anything else?
That's all they talked about. I mean, some of them went off on universal payer systems. They bounced around on homelessness, but no one had a solution. But they criticized Hilton and Bianco and said, I think Becerra even said it. He's like, your daddy, he came out. It's like, Hilton, your daddy, Trump, you'll do whatever he tells you to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. That's their message. Yeah. Because right now, Trump is polling horribly in the national polls. And so Dems are it's not about policy. It's not about their ideas. It's about Trump.
A lot of folks believe, and I don't believe it for the West because we're a little different. It's interesting to see that these two coastal, the city of New York, and then you have this West Coast race, and the difference in the messaging, right? The difference in the voices that are at the table on the cast of characters, and not a single note is coming through in your assessment, right? Yeah. Not a single linear message is coming out. So is that the brand? Is that the new brand? That the new brand of California Democrats is anti-Trump?
They're not even polling high enough. I mean, Becerra's doing okay, right? Yeah. But he's not leading Hilton. And I mean, the polls go back and forth, and sometimes some of these polls have Steyer up there. I mean, I think he's paying for those polls, frankly. But at the end of the day, the messaging is an anti-Trump message. And that's what we've seen in some of these local races, and then the primaries, and then here in this jungle primary, which has R's and D's together on stage. But isn't it interesting, Sisto, that it's not majority, right? It's a reflection on Republican sentiment. Might be interesting on what November might bring.
I think that what we're seeing in the tried and true hardcore 3 of 3 voter, educated activist voter, which is usually about 20-25% of any polling group that you ever look at, right? The tried and trues, that they show up and people go, oh, that's the guy we're all going to get behind. And then messaging starts to become clearer as you come along.
Yeah.
But is that going to drive the message? Is that anti-Trump sentiment the sentiment that's going to drive elections in the Southwest, in New Mexico, in Arizona, in Nevada, in Colorado, in Utah? Is that where we're going to see messaging being driven by the national consultants because Trump is just so bad?
I think it has staying power, right? I think it's got a half-life that's going to die off shortly. And where Democrats should pivot, and Republicans are certainly pivoting there, is affordability. Back to the economy, right? It's the economy, stupid. What's in your wallet? How much does a tank of gas cost? This is now the next narrative. My prediction, Sisto, is that this war in Iran, which, the U.S. is beating the crap out of Iran. Let's be clear. My prediction is we're going to see gas drop back below $2, right, in some states this summer, and it's going to flood the market. And then he will come back out and say, look at the Democrats. They wanted to support this crazy, king in Iran to build a nuclear weapon to kill the West. And meanwhile, all they cared about was, low gas prices. I got you low gas prices. Well, so if he's able to do that, I think Republicans can recover.
Well, right they can. But I think that there's one factor that we're forgetting, right? Is we're both playing into this national narrative that the national folks are running the campaigns on either end of the spectrum. Now, we're forgetting, though, to take into account that we had a whole slew of primaries that happened right before any of what we're talking about right now came true. And the ultra left and the ultra right didn't get the bump that they thought they were going to get. We saw a reset with the voters. And I think that the voters are getting a little bit smarter, Eddie. I think that the voters are starting to say, that's spin. That's not real. I don't trust you. I feel that that's just a line. Not to say that it's a lie, but it's a line. And the spin isn't going to work with average everyday voters. And Eve's numbers for Trump are way low than what you and I have ever seen for a presidential, for a president.
They were Biden was, weren't they?
Yeah, but it was towards the end of Biden's administration. It was after I think people were still holding on to Biden, saying, I'm holding on to Biden because he's my only chance and he might be the nominee again. So I got to stick right here. And that's where they stayed. In this instance, I don't think that people believe that Trump is going to be the nominee again, nor that the Trump Republican Party is going to be the party that we see emerge after this cycle. I think a lot of people are just kind of staying quiet right now. They're going to wait. My favorite gal, MTG, and a lot of other folks that have left the MAGA brand have become more vocal, and you're starting to see more people follow them down the road. So I think that and even here in New Mexico, we've got a gubernatorial race where you really haven't had a candidate completely dedicate themselves to the brand. There's one candidate who has snuggled up to the brand by hosting a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago. I think that it's now we're getting to the voters are starting to ask what's real and what's not. And they're looking for just direct, honest truth. And I mean, I love talking with my progressive friends about this all the time, because progressives have always told me that what's the number one thing that progressives want from their candidates. And they always say one thing: transparency and honesty. Those are the two things that they say are the number one thing for them. So if you're not transparent and you're not honest, they're starting to question who you really are, because over the years, a lot of folks took the pledge on either end of the spectrum, whether it be the MAGA pledge or the progressive pledge, and people are starting to walk that back now, and they're starting to say, these people weren't really who we thought they were. We need to start looking for people who can at least be honest with us about where they're going with this, and we can start working with them within that structure. So that leads to the conversation that we're at now. So you were having an existential crisis, and it looks like you were somebody's been kind of leading you down the road.
Listen, many of us are having existential crisis, and I do want to jump into this real quick, and I want to revisit it. We need to put Spencer Pratt on sort of our board. I don't know if you've been watching his ads in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. He has this whole "Not Like Us" ad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. He did a phenomenal job. I'm really interested to see how Los Angeles responds. So we're going to revisit Spencer. But yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot on the show. This is an opportunity for us to hold our friends, hold our party, and hold those outside of our party accountable, right? And I look at my party and I've said, yeah, why am I Democrat? I have these existential crises about political party, and I've been affiliated with the Democratic Party. There's been so much value that they've provided my relationships, friendships, from federal all the way down to local level. So many people that I just appreciate and honor and respect. One of them is Alan Dershowitz. I mean, we're talking about longtime political, integrated thinker in movements and presidential campaigns in this country. This Democrat has been, I think, 70 years of his life as a Democrat. And he just penned a letter saying that he's leaving the Democratic Party. And I think the Democratic Party has a problem today. And I've been talking about this, but as Alan Dershowitz has highly, identified, that the Democratic Party has now become the most anti-Semitic party in U.S. history. And I think that's really compelling. And he gives some facts around it. I mean, you go back, think about this. In 1940s, when both parties were pushing back against the war and the history that we know about World War II and, the value that we got from, Ford Motors and Mercedes-Benz. And there's so much money being made off of what was happening in Germany. And then it came out that, oh my goodness, this population of, Jews throughout Europe are being not just persecuted, they are being encamped and murdered and exterminated. And then all of a sudden there's this moral vigor that came through most parties. I think Dems and Republicans, mostly Dems, were pushing for liberation, right? And freeing this from a national perspective. So you take that mindset, what Alan Dershowitz had, and you go forward to today, and now he's looking at 2026 and looking at the party and looking at idiots like Hassan Piker, this a-hole who's born into wealth that comes out and spewing just disgusting, notions on people. Like, you know what? Democrats should not stand for hate anywhere in its party, but they have creeped open this tiny little cave that is exploding on them. And it is this notion of hate towards Jews. And I call it out. I see it across the board, the support for it in variety of candidates. We used to absolutely bury someone for any sort of Nazi reference that they would have. Right. And then you've got this Graham Planter candidate up in Maine who has a Nazi tattoo on his body, doesn't even apologize, doesn't even dismiss it, just moves on. But that's where the party has come. Well, and that's why Alan has left.
And I think but this is my concern. Okay. This is my concern with the dialogue here is this a one issue defection, or is it a across the board spectrum view of what the party stands for and what the party's views are in that defection? Now, I want to say that there's problems on both ends because we both know that more people are registering as independent. They don't want to affiliate with the party anymore.
Yep.
But the reason why, and let's dig into it. The reason why a lot of the parties are running rogue right now is because of one simple reason and one simple reason only. Citizens United created the ability for everybody who wants to have a voice in any type of chamber to create their own version of the Democratic Party and funnel dollars directly there, and to just hone in on their messaging and say whoever has the biggest ball wins.
Yep.
And that's the real issue. And I think that's where you and I were pre Citizens United and post Citizens United. And I think that when we were in those days before Citizens United, we felt the conversation and the discussion surrounding a lot of these issues within the party happening at a much higher level. I don't know about you, but the last I still follow the local Young Democrats here in New Mexico because my heart will always be with those organizations, because it gave me an insight into a broader spectrum of issues that are happening around our country. And they just had their national convention. And I was a little taken back, Eddie, because you and I remember those conventions, and it was a huge hall with, 300, 400 young people from the Democratic Party gathering together to have meaningful conversations about those issues. If there was 100 at the last one, from what I could see, and I could be wrong, that's an indicator to me that what has been happening within the Democratic Party and then you start seeing these polls, and you just brought it up earlier. The people who are latching on to the Democratic nominee are the people that are the tried and true, involved, engaged folks. So this defection that's happening, is this happening because it's one issue? Is it a multitude of issues that people are going through? Because Alan Dershowitz, for all intents and purposes, he was never a great Democrat, in my opinion. This is the same guy who he stood behind the Constitution and he said, everybody deserves to have fair and equal representation. But this is also the guy who defended Donald Trump. This is also the guy who defended O.J. Simpson. This is also the guy who defended Jeffrey Epstein. So
I don't think he defended him. I think he associated with him.
Yeah, he associated with him. But at the same time, people change over time, Eddie. And we have to be accepting of that fact. Alan Dershowitz comes from one of the most conservative branches of Judaism of anybody out there. And so there's some lines that he just will not cross, right? He said a few things about Catholics too that nobody called him out on, right? And he's even made comments about the fact that, interreligious marriages shouldn't happen, in his opinion. So
yeah, he certainly is a conservative, right? When you think about the notion of morality from a religious perspective,
yeah, and
you're getting to is there's people leaving parties.
Yeah.
People are leaving parties, both sides.
Yeah.
And they're being occupied. Unfortunately, when a vacuum happens, it is filled. And it's filled by, in my opinion, a more radicalized perspective of political politics. And that ideology is further killing the parties in how they are designed. And we saw what happened, right? MAGA extremism. We saw what's happened there, and that's pushed people out. The loyalty to Trump. If you're not loyal to Trump, all of a sudden, off with your head, and they move on to the next person.
But this is
now all of a sudden, people are leaving Trump and people are leaving the Democrats.
But this has happened throughout the history of our country, Eddie. I mean, remember, there was a time where Democrats were the guys who were still standing with the South, saying slavery forever, segregation forever. That was their narrative at one time. A Republican friend of mine said, "Have you seen the movie Lincoln?" And I said, "Yeah, it was a great movie." He says, "Yeah, didn't look too good for you guys, side of the aisle." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the interesting part about that is there's a scene in Lincoln where they come in and they're trying to round up Democrats to vote to abolish slavery in the United States. And the Democrats that they bring over, they said, okay, you're going to change your party. You're going to become a Republican, and we're going to bring you in." From what your argument is right now, Eddie, is that there's a vacuum. Sometimes the vacuum is sucking people into it too, right? They're sucking you into where the power exists. And the power existed, and you were sucking those ideologies into the Republican Party. They stayed there. They lived there. They were resided there. And we knew that they were there for many, many generations. And now, because we've become, we're basically driven by special interest groups and dark money groups, they can interject into the conversation whatever they want, whenever they want, how they want, and they never have to tell anybody where the money came from. Right? And that's the problem. It's real funny. I love watching campaigns. You and I love campaigns as much as we do, is where the conversation switches and suddenly you see the mailer that comes out that says, Sisto Abeyta stands with Palestine. And then on the flip side, call Sisto Abeyta and tell him not to stand with Palestine. Right? And it's nasty, ugly picture of me and babies crying and horrible visuals on it. And people are like, how could anybody do this? How could anybody support this? Right? But it doesn't say vote for the other guy.
Yep.
Doesn't say don't elect.
Yep. You're not influencing the outcome of an election.
Exactly. You're educating voters. That's what they say. You're educating voters. So I think that's where the voters are starting to ask for truth. And they've seen enough of it already that now they're desensitized to it. I'm enjoying it, Eddie, because I knew it was coming. I saw this happening 20 years ago, and I screaming and yelling at people in Democratic leadership and the Democratic Party. We are going to lose control of this if we're not careful and we're not at the forefront of it. Now, I'm not going to change. I don't have a problem with my party because I still believe in the party that I fought for and that I worked in. Still believe in that same party. Do I see it a lot of times in the party that's actively working out there? No. But what I have realized over the years, and it's so funny to me, Eddie, it cracks me up. I think it's just the gray in my beard, is that now I'm the grown up in the room, right? We were the YDs. Now I'm the old guy in the room, and I'm talking to these party leaders, and I'm saying, you can't let this get so far. You can't let this get out of control. You got to rein these people back. And you got to condemn it, and you got to call a spade, and you got to speak truth to power, and you got to do all those things, because the greatest relationships I built when I was in the Young Democrats with people was when I disagreed with them.
Yeah. Or held people accountable.
And held people accountable. Right. And so I think that we're headed in that direction. I think it's recorrecting itself in a lot of ways. I think a lot of folks are getting there. I'm not too sure that I'm ready to call just the Democratic Party anti-Semitic, because I mean I think it's more than that.
There's certainly some factions.
I say that there's some factions in there, but also I think that there's been factions about a lot of other issues too. I mean, I think that there's, the funny part to me with that with this discussion is that for years I've said there's an undertone of racism within the Democratic Party that nobody wanted to recognize and nobody wanted to talk about. And they still don't to some extent. I mean, it's funny when I hear, like a couple years back, there was a gubernatorial nominee who's a Republican, female, Hispanic. I had elders in the Republican Party coming to me and saying things like, why are your people voting for that woman? Your people. So I know it exists.
Well, and that's, remember what happened with Kamala. I mean, the same thing. There was.
And why do Hispanic males hate women? That's the narrative. I mean, and it's not about that. It's not about that at all. It's about the fact that people who are talking to us are talking at us, not talking to us or talking with us. And I think that that's the narrative that we're seeing played out. I think it's very easy for us to say, do I think that that's racist? Do I think that no, I don't. I think it's racism comes from a place, and anti-Semitism comes out of a place of being uneducated. And you have to educate people about it. I think that's what we're trying to do here. I think we're trying to speak truth to all of that. And that's important for us at Cactus Crossfire. But in all of that, go ahead.
I was going to just say, you started off the episode about holding accountability and trust, right? Trust being a primary thread that just sort of held all of this together. It makes me think all the things we talked about, right? The public trust within party leadership, direction of the party, DNC, RNC. Holding your group accountable is an important variable to the efficacy and lifeblood of your organization.
Damn, efficacy. Okay.
I want that, right? We want Republicans and Democrats to have the accountability internally so that they maintain the lifespan, right? Mm-hmm. And the staying power of what they're trying to deliver. And to that point, we talk about what's happening. This guy, Cole Allen, right? Teacher out of California. I've been reading the news. Have you seen this crazy stuff with the social media star Noah Beck's sister, Haley Beck, who is prostituting one of her students? And the allegations, again, we don't know all the facts about it, but apparently her mom was involved in something as well. And then you look further in the teachers. I want to bring up this fact that the teachers' unions are the loudest, and they're spending more money right now in political campaigns than any other organization. But my criticism to the teachers' unions are they have always refused to police their own and hold themselves accountable. There's always a failure. They want to blame something else. Oh, that teacher was abusive because they don't get paid enough, right? Or, oh, that teacher worked too long. That's why they molested a child. Like, are you freaking kidding me? These teachers' unions take money. They build this huge political action committee. They get involved in campaigns across the country, but they refuse to hold their own people accountable. And I think that needs to change. I think unions have to hold their own folks accountable for awful behavior. You need to police your own. You need to get rid of these disgusting predatory factions that are within your group and carve them out. And that is what will restore the trust. The reason why people trust education system, you talked about, do you believe in education? There's another poll, the Wobegon effect, Sisto, where it says, do you think education in this country is good? And overwhelmingly, people will say no. Everyone will say it's awful. Education in this country is awful. And then I say, well, what about education in your home district? Oh, it's pretty good. It's really good.
Yeah.
Why? Because they think in their own backyard, everything's great. But there's this larger mistrust of the leaders that be within education systems in the nation. It comes to the teachers union because they're not holding these folks accountable. This Haley Beck thing is disgusting, Sisto. We cannot believe what's happening in Arizona.
Well, the funny thing is that, one of the things that, and you're absolutely right, the teachers union does need to start policing their own, especially in these cases. Yep. In the cases of sexual assault, abuse, in those areas. And even more so, the bigger issue becomes within that framework. And Dr. Ableser just showed up, y'all, a few minutes ago with his efficacy comment. Is that he wants y'all to understand that at the end of the day, these organizations need to be held accountable too, because their advocacy isn't really advocacy. It's more of, sometimes in a lot of these different groups that are outside of the realm of political parties and are in that dark money group, of power and influence, right? And so folks have got to get smarter about it. They got to start asking the harder questions about what they really want. And to your point about polling in regards to what education looks like in your hometown versus do you think education's great? People need to start looking at education in a holistic view, not just if it's great in my district and if my kid's teacher's great. It's got to be more about how's the education for the kid in the district that is failing, and how do I uplift them? It's community more than anything else. And when you have community at the table, when you have people at the table, and you have honest and open discussions, you get to the truth of the matter. You get to the truth of the matter. And I think it's incumbent on folks that are watching this, that are watching our podcasts, that are listening in. They need to understand one thing and one thing only. We can only give you so much information in this 1 hour segment that we do. You guys got to go do the homework. And if you want to engage in the conversation, engage in the conversation. Like, dislike, comment in the comment sections of our show, so that we can get to the bottom of what the real pulse of our viewers and the public are. So, Eddie, we've been down this road. We've hit all the high notes. We've talked about it all, but from the ballroom to the ballot box is where people are going to have to be at. And if you think that what we've just talked about today is a big freaking mess, wait till the elections in the West start really rolling out. You'll start seeing a lot more negative stuff coming out. But this isn't about just the headlines. We're starting to see patterns, right? We're starting to see patterns and things that are happening across the spectrum. But with all that being said, Eddie, what we like to do at the end of every single show, give me something prickly, give me something quickly, and give me something spicy. So what do you got for me, Eddie?
Well, I'm going to do it in prickly, quickly, and end on spicy. My spicy take is a little bit of spiciness that makes your eyes water, and we'll get to that in a second. But my prickly take is back to the teachers union. I want to talk about when I moved from Arizona. I resigned my Senate seat, took the inaugural director of the Office of Safe and Respectful Learning Environments in the state of Nevada, Department of Education, brand new office, Sisto. And my first meeting, I gathered a collection of leaders, of education leaders across the state of Nevada. Of course, I included teachers' unions. And I remember sitting down and said, my job is to make sure that every child has a safe environment free from physical and emotional and mental intimidation or injury. And so I wanted to put forth a variety of policies that, one, held adults responsible for the roles that they played in harming children. And the moment I brought that up, the teachers' union stood up and said, absolutely not. You have no right to hold us accountable. Teachers' unions have their own negotiations with their districts, and they are not held to the accountability level that you have nothing to play here. And so my prickly take, and I look at Cole Allen, I look at this Beck situation with Haley Beck and teachers across that. You cannot go a day without a controversy of a teacher doing something horrendous to a child, the most vulnerable population. You know what? Police your own, hold yourself accountable. Look at your group and recognize that you are letting bad actors through, and it is making you guys look bad. And do not push back when there are policies like what I came into to try to hold you accountable. So that's my prickly take of the day. Sisto, my quickly take, really quick. Sisto, I will never eat at Panda Express ever again. Holy crap, man. And when I say holy crap, I emphasize on the crap, because Panda Express, with their grilled chicken and greens, when I was trying to eat healthy, gave me a serious case of food poisoning that almost left me devastated for 2 days. Thankfully, I got through it quickly, but oh my goodness, that was awful. And, Panda Express, if any of you watch and listen to this, you better do a better job of making sure your temperatures of your food are better and your foods are well preserved. My spicy take, Sisto, I watched segments of that 60 Minutes special on Senator Sass, and holy crap, I was in tears. His struggle with pancreatic cancer, his commitment to his family, his preparation for death gives us all a pause to think about what our lives mean, what our fortune and our riches here on earth, and then in heaven, and how different those two things are, and his understanding that he's going to see his family again in heaven, and what a kind individual, what a thoughtful man, what a leader of this country that was treated poorly, by both sides, frankly. And I wish his family nothing but the most love and honor as they go through a very challenging time in their life, as he faces the end of his life, and how they will adapt and deal with the coping of grief. So that's my spicy take. Gets in my eyes, gets me a little teary-eyed, but please watch that 60-minute special, because his take on what is coming for him is incredible. Sisto, how about you? Prickly, quickly, and spicy.
You know, I'm going to start with spicy, and it kind of leads into the narrative that we talk about is I want the media to understand that I'm very jealous of what you guys do. You guys have a tough job. You spent a lot of time in your careers building that up. All of our journalists are completely and totally underpaid, but to their employers, pay them more. Give them the resources that they need to start being able to report the in-depth stories that Eddie and I grew up on. Those in-depth research stories where they were going after the bad guys, because we need you guys to do that again, and stop buying into the spin from guys like me and Eddie who are paid the big bucks to spin you. Learn how to do your homework. Get out and get the people around you that can help you do the homework. That's what you need. That's my message to the media class. Prickly, going back, is political parties. Get a message. Stop using outrage as your only tool to drive voters to the polls. I'm tired of hearing people tell me, Sisto, I'm tired of voting against people. I want to vote for someone. Parties, start investing in yourselves again. Believe in yourselves again. Start having conversations with folks again. Build on what you know you can do. And every time you're in that room with your fellow colleagues in the Democratic Party, instead of them giving to the 501c4s and C3s, ask them to start giving back to the party. I make my contribution monthly to the party, and everybody else should too. And quickly, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's watching it. We touched on it a little bit. State attorney general's races, folks. Start paying attention to the folks that are running for attorney general. These folks may not be sexy and maybe not at the top of your list, but they are determining the prosecutions, the investigations, and the accountability that is happening in our states. And follow them like you do a governor's race. So, folks, that's my quickly take. I'm Sisto Abeyta. We're here wrapping up another edition of Cactus Crossfire. Here, as always, with me is my friend Eddie Ableser. Thanks to Mandy, our producer, Gabe at 8688 Studios. And so with that, we're wrapping it up. Everybody, we'll see you next time.
Peace.